Is it just me, or are the industry plants getting lazier? Because I feel like this year we've seen a few examples of just people randomly popping up, younger Gen Z voices randomly popping up into the ether. You know, you don't know who they are, and the next thing is they're on Fox News giving a segment on Charlie Kirk, or they're talking about the issues of the GOP, and you're like, who the fuck are you? Where did you come from? Like, am I tripping? It just seems like it's not even well done at this point. It's literally just an industry plant. And it all started coming out at the same time, kind of. It's almost like it's a response to something or somebody. Now, who do you think that someone could be? A bunch of young Gen Z voices just being platformed by the mainstream media out of nowhere? Right-wing conservative voices? Out of nowhere, dude. Who could they be trying to compete with? I don't know, man. I couldn't even tell you who, because it's like, who's been on like such a generational run and has disrupted politics more than like any other single person this year? Like, who's done that? That's a part of the Gen Z movement. I don't know, dude. I don't think any of us could figure that out. It's like, maybe it's nobody, you know? It's like, can you guys tell me who it is? Who could it be? But anyways, I got 3 people for you. I got 3 dudes. 3 dudes, pause. 3 dudes that are, in fact, industry plants. And we're going to talk about this. And those 3 guys are John Doyle, Nan Haley, and Brylan Hollyhand. Now, we've talked about Brian quite a bit on this channel, mainly just because I love making fun of this guy. He's hilarious. He's like, dude, he's 19. He comes from a family with connections and money. He has like a show called the Brylan Hollyhand Show. He writes a book. He's like, I'm a world's best-selling author at 19. Nobody's fucking heard of this dude. Charlie Kirk dies. He pops up on Fox News left and right, all these segments, smiling like, guys, Charlie Kirk's dead. I gotta take over. And that's basically his whole shtick. So I'm always gonna make fun of Brylan. But John Doyle, we haven't talked about, and we haven't talked about Nan Haley. But all 3 of these guys are industry plants, at least in their current form. And I'm saying current form because John Doyle is the only exception, as far as I can tell, to where he doesn't come from money. He doesn't come from established parents. And, he started out doing his own shit. And so I kind of have a little bit more respect for John, at least as far as making his own platform. But the way he is now, he is an industry plant. And I'll explain in a minute. But these 3 guys are obviously being pushed by establishment conservatives to be a response to Nick Fuentes. 100%. In their current state, they are being used as a way to try and win over young Gen Z men and women, because now we got women that are liking Nick, so they're going after the women as well. But they're not only being used as a way to win over younger men and women, but also a way to kind of appease the older generations in the conservative movement. In the sense that a lot of Gen Xers, in some cases millennials, maybe not as many millennials, but especially Gen Xers and boomer conservatives, they can't handle when the younger generations start to disagree with them. They really cannot comprehend, how could all these young men just hate us so much and disagree with us on everything? It doesn't make sense. So they need people like John Doyle. They need people like Nan Haley. They need people like Brylan Hollyhand to come on Fox News and to reassure them that their boomer cut conservative politics are still in fashion. They see Brylan Hollyhand come on the news and they're like, oh my gosh, he's just like Jeb Bush, Don. He's saying all things I want to hear. There's still hope for the future generation of this here country. That's what they do. They want people like this so it can reassure them that their politics have not failed. But they have. So if anything, it's being used as a way to make them feel better and to make them think, see, they're not lost. There's still hope. There's still hope. We can still have our foreign policy and we can still support Israel. We're going to support Israel till we die. Because a lot of the older people are completely delusional in the fact that they believe that the amount of people who don't like Israel from the younger generations, it's like a small like subsect of younger Gen Z men and women. It's not a majority. And I'm not talking about just liberals. I'm talking about mainly conservative Gen Z people. Right? People who are right-wing to some degree. They love the idea that their politics are still going strong, but they're not. And we know that, but they don't. And so these industry plants are used in a way to make them feel better. And when they feel better, they don't question themselves. And that's the reason why those tactics are used on older people as well. There's a lot of psyops that are used on older people. In fact, most of the time, they're the ones that get psyoped more than anybody else because they're the ones that buy the psyops because they've been conditioned their entire lives to do so. At least a majority of them. There's still quite a few of them that are noticers. They figured out, hey, Israel's running shit, all this other stuff. Like they figured that shit out earlier on. There are a lot of people like that, but a majority are not. And if you are one of those older people and if you are a noticer, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You get what I'm saying. Like these people don't understand. And it's because they're used to the psyops. The psyops are like their favorite thing for breakfast. It's like they have their pancakes and their bacon and their eggs, and then they have their Fox News psyop. They have their segment with Brylan Hollyhand in the morning. And it's their whole day, bro. That makes their life worth living. They love the psyop. And it's because they're just used to it. They're conditioned to like it. So these industry plants are another form of psyop for the older generation in the fact that it makes them feel good about their politics in the sense that they won't question their politics. Because when everybody starts to disagree with them, even the most psyoped, delusional individuals, maybe not all of them, but most of them, they'll start to take a second look at their belief, at their party, at their politics. They'll be like, well, do they work? If all these younger people just have shitty lives and if none of them agree with me anymore, maybe I'm wrong. Now, obviously, that's not most of them, but it still happens. And so they need the psyops, they need the industry plants to kind of distract them from what's really going on. Because they can't like Nick, man. Nick says the M-word. All right? He says the M-word, and that's the worst thing ever. And anybody who would say the M-word, especially hard R, how dare you? How dare you say that word ever in any context? And like, how dare you think that's okay for free speech? I would never say such words, ever. Especially not on my Twitter, and especially not on my Rumble exclusive videos, okay? I would never utter those words. How dare you? How dare you, good sir, think that I would have a potty mouth like that? And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's talk about the three industry plants, the good goys, the good little Gen Z goyams that have entered the chat. Let's talk about him. Now, first up is the easiest one that's obviously an industry plant, and that's Brylan Hollyhand. It's the most obvious shit. This dude at the age of 12 was doing interviews with like politicians, congressmen. He did an interview with Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens back in the day when they were like teaming up and doing tours. This kid, look, he's basically made in a petri dish in Israel from Tel Aviv. All right. He's a cuck conservative boomer's wet dream of a younger Gen Z talk show host. He's everything they could ever want. He dresses the way they want men to dress. He says all the things that they want to hear. He has all those old boomer style politics, the Reagan era politics, all these things, man. He kind of talks a little bit like George Bush, talks about the economy. Is like, God, what is going on with the economy? What's going on with all these here Muslims and this here country? But he won't talk about the Indians. And when you press him on immigration, he'll have the same views on immigration that so many Republicans have had that essentially has destroyed our country. And so Hollyhand is just the most basic, inorganic, unauthentic, robotic talk show industry plant that I can think of. So at least the other two guys that we're going to talk about have some level of personality. Hollyhand has none of it. He literally has none. And I kind of feel bad because you could tell from a very young age, he always wanted to be this. He always wanted to be on Fox News, maybe having his own segment, having his own newspaper, best-selling conservative writer. Like he's always wanted to be that person, and he wanted to be it for Gen Z. And you could tell because of his parents, his connections, the money he comes from, all these different things, that he was in a way kind of being groomed to be this person. Like what he is today is essentially years upon years of effort from all the people around him, including himself, to turn him into this. And it just sucks for him because like he emerges at a time where everybody is kind of rejecting this style of person in politics. Like nobody gives a fuck about not swearing. Nobody cares about this safe space, cuck conservative person. And nobody in his generation thinks the way he does. Even people who would agree with him on Israel, on immigration, who are Gen Z, nobody's like him in the sense that they still have disagreements. They've still evolved kind of past this. So he's cooked. Dude, like nobody buys this bullshit, bro. Nobody buys this bullshit. Everybody knows it's full of shit. He's like one of those older supermodels, you know, like when plastic surgery started becoming like a thing and all of these older women that were hot at one point are like, oh shit, I'm getting old. I need to stay beautiful. And so they start getting all this plastic surgery and they look like a fucking horror show. They look like Laura Loomer on steroids. You know exactly what I'm talking. He's like that, but for politics from a talk show perspective. He went through all the surgery. He put all the down payments. You know, he went to Turkey to get the veneers and all this shit. Like he did all the shit. And then he emerges into the public and then he automatically just gets exposed and rejected for just having like no personality and just sucking. Like he's boring as fuck. I've seen his speeches he gives at his universities, and they're just fucking boring. Like, why the fuck would you go and watch it? I think the only reason I would go to one of his speeches is just so I could ask him questions at the end. And I feel like if you said penis in front of this guy, he would melt. I'm not even joking. Like, I feel like if you said the wrong thing around him, he would have a stroke. Like, this isn't some dude who's gonna lead anybody to anything, all right? Maybe he'll lead bingo at the fucking retirement home. You know, maybe he'll do like an Elvis impression, do a little dance for them. But besides that, he ain't doing shit. He's cooked completely. Nobody buys it. Now, moving on, we're gonna talk about John Doyle. John Doyle. Heck off, comment. The John Goyle show. John Goyams. John Goy. What a name. But it's funny because I used to actually watch Doyle a long time ago. When he first started getting popular on YouTube back in the day, I used to watch his videos. I used to watch him do his on-the-street interviews, antagonizing the liberals, owning the liberals at the protests. What a fucking legend. You know, I used to watch him, and I liked him. Back in the day, I did. But my politics evolved. My point of view on things evolved. His didn't. And you could attest that to the fact that when you kind of build an audience in the way he did, and it's revolving around politics, it's very difficult for you to kind of establish a platform like that and then slowly evolve your politics, especially when it's on controversial things like Israel, like immigration. Immigration wasn't really something most people talked about in the way that it's being talked about today, really ever. There's only a handful of people that have kind of talked about that over the years. And the reason why Nick Fuentes is so popular now is because that's something he's kind of always talked about. Even when he wasn't talking about the Jews and asking questions about Israel, he was talking about immigration. There's a speech you can watch that he gave at a university back in like 2017. This was before he got banned off everything. This was before he was as radical as he is now, and he was still pretty hardcore on immigration. So he hasn't changed really on that much. And I know some people would disagree and say, oh, he's changed a lot, but not really. But somebody like John Doyle, it's kind of harder for someone like him to change their politics and evolve their politics. He kind of always has to be a Trump conservative, because that's what he built his entire platform on. He always has to be a supporter of Trump and of MAGA. Even when it's like indefensible, he still has to be one of the people to defend it, because that's what his audience expects. And that's why his channel kind of died, in a sense. I mean, he has over 350,000 subscribers, and he hasn't made a video that has gone over 100K views in over a year. Every time he puts out a video, he's gotten close, but the reason why I'm using that as an example is because he started getting stale, that he could only really ever do the same talking points, kind of have the same opinions, the same attitude towards everything. And there's a reason for that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But because of that, he slowly started making less and less videos, having more and more wait time for him to upload, until eventually he had a revival about 2 weeks ago, or at least an attempt at a revival, and that is his new show, The John Doyle Show. But his show With the Blaze has come out recently, and it hasn't been getting a lot of views. And it's actually getting a lot of criticisms from his own audience. If you go and if you watch the first episode, which is how we should navigate the MAGA Civil War, a lot of his own subscribers are complaining because he used to have a studio set up where he had like a Jesus bobblehead, and at one point I think he had a crucifix because he's a Christian, and he's removed all of that shit for his Blaze show and just has a bunch of shit with Trump. He's got the MAGA hat, he's got a Buddha statue of Trump, all this stuff, and people, if you go to the comments, they're saying, hey, you're missing the Jesus statue, you're missing the Jesus bobblehead, why are you doing this? And it goes to show you why I said his politics hasn't changed. He's kind of always been the same Trump conservative that he started as. And the reason being is because of this show. This is always what he's wanted. He's always wanted to have a show on something like The Blaze. He's always wanted to have his own talk show. He's always wanted to be somebody like Michael Knowles, in the sense that he has his own show with his own intro and his own audience, and it's on a publication like The Blaze or like Daily Wire. And that's why he spent years sucking off Glenn Beck and never really going radical on his politics. And he finally got what he wanted. He got his talk show on The Blaze. He's established. He's got his own podcast now. It's official. Breaking news. The John Doyle Show is official now. Better go watch it. Make sure you watch him talk about the MAGA Civil War. Oh, dude, his new episode is called Import the Third World, Become the Third World. I wonder what that's going to be about. I can't wait to watch it, guys. It's going to be great, guys. Make sure you get your popcorn. And one of the things you'll notice with all of these people as well is when they do talk about certain controversial topics, they're never the first people to do so, like ever. And it's not just with these Gen Z industry plant people, it's literally all of boomer cuck conservatives from every generation. Talking about the MAGA Civil War, like, dude, we talked about that over a month ago. Everybody else started catching up. Everybody started playing catch up because they're behind the curve. They're not the people who set the trends. They're the ones that follow the trends, which shows you that they're not real leaders of ideas. They're just not. They're the ones piggybacking off of everybody else. For example, John Doyle's newest episode is on immigration from the third world. I'd imagine he's talking about Trump's Twitter post on Thanksgiving. He's probably talking about Somalians and Afghanis and how we got to stop importing third worldists and all these different things. That's probably the points he's going to make. But this episode just came out, and this is a conversation a lot of people are just now starting to talk about. But that's the establishment people. Us, people on our side of the aisle, people from our corner, we started talking about this over a month ago. My video I made on remigration, which was the sequel to the video I made on immigration, came out a month ago. Over a month. And now look at where things are going. You have people like John Doyle talking about the third world and how we got to halt immigration. And, you know, they're talking about legal immigration. They're not talking about illegal. They're talking about legal immigration and the problems that they have with legal immigration. They don't acknowledge and talk about all the issues and all the problems, but the fact that they're even talking about it shows you they're playing catch up. They're trying to catch up to us. They're trying to catch up to what the average Gen Z people are already talking about and discussing. And they'll talk about that. They'll talk about the Somalis. They'll talk about the Afghan immigrants, but they won't talk about the Indians coming over and taking your job. They won't talk about the fact that with Indians, by the way, but a lot of these so-called experts that they keep bringing over, Trump made this excuse for the reason why we need H-1B visa holders is because we don't know how to do certain things and we need these people, these experts to come over here and train us. We need their engineers. We need their doctors. We need their computer scientists. And there's a growing trend with a lot of these Indians coming over here absolutely nailing the interviews to get approved, saying all the right things, having all the right answers. But then when they actually start working, and a lot of these people either have junior level, entry level, or in some cases senior level jobs, they don't know how to fucking do anything. They can't even write memos in basic English. So the communication is completely fucked. They don't actually know how to program anything. They don't actually have any expertise. They can't train anybody. There's actually a growing level of whistleblowers at all these different companies coming out and talking about how they have to do the jobs for the people that are supposed to train them because the people who train them don't fucking know anything. And it's because these Indians are abusing the system to just get over here legally and get work, but they don't know. They're lying. So this idea from conservatives that all these immigrants coming over here and teaching us because we're so retarded and stupid and we don't know how to do work ourselves is bullshit. Because they don't even fucking know what they're doing either. They can't even read. A majority of them, when they write emails or memos, they're using ChatGPT. And it still has fucked up English. Dude, they're not helping anybody. But you won't see people like John Doyle talk about it. You won't see people like conservatives talk about it because that's not what it's for. It's never been for training us so we can have better people here. It's never been about education. It's never been about that. It's always been about cheap labor and replacing Americans. And I saw somebody pose the theory that possibly the reason why Trump and so many of these people are pushing for H-1B visa is because they're trying to compete with China, in the sense that you can't really compete with China on a huge level because they have essentially slave labor over in China. They'll pay people pennies on the dollar to do insane amounts of work. You can't really do that here, but if you have enough people that you don't have to pay full price, you have enough people that they are kind of like slave workers here legally, it kind of gives you a little bit more of an edge to fight China at least. But I digress. We're not here to talk about immigration, but I thought that was interesting. I thought I'd bring it up. But you won't see people like John Doyle talk about that. You won't see people who are in these spaces mention these things because it would be heresy for them to do so. But they will bring up the safe space options. After we start talking about it and we start discussing it, it forces them to talk about it because they need to do damage control. You see how that works? And it sucks because John Doyle, I did used to like him. And I feel like if he didn't do this, if he didn't go down this path, if he actually evolved his politics, he could be really relevant. He could actually have a better platform. He could be a more laid back voice. He didn't have to stay the way he did, but the thing is, he picked his side. He did do those things. He did suck off Glenn Beck to get a job at the Blaze, and self-admittedly, he's told several people that he even lied about liking Israel so he could get certain connections and get certain jobs. And it shows. He still has his YouTube channel. He never got banned. He never got censored. And he never will. And it's because he's not willing to talk about the things that actually matter. And that's kind of the problem with him. So it sucks that this is where he's gone. But I mean, what can you do? He made his bed, now he's going to lay in it, and he's an industry plant. He isn't authentic. And the only reason he got a Blaze TV show is because Nick Fuentes got popular. Nick Fuentes broke the glass ceiling and entered the mainstream conversation. And all of these people, as a response, need a way to do damage control on the younger conservatives. And unfortunately for him, he can say whatever he wants about Nick. He can hate Nick. He can do whatever. But let me tell you, John, if you're watching this, the only reason you have a show on the Blaze is because of Nick. You are a response to him. You're not where you are because people actually want you to be there on your own. You're just there to do damage control. But that's just how the machine works. That's how the system works. This isn't new. This isn't original. He's not going to be the last one. There's always going to be people in his shoes. They're going to bend the knee. They're going to ease off certain conversations. They're going to refuse to use certain words because they want to be a part of the conversation. They want to survive. They're not willing to get down and dirty and bleed a little bit, It's a little bit of that pussy shit we don't really need. We don't need any more of that to win. We need the opposite. So, John Doyle, the John Doyle show, it's like, what more is there to say? Now, moving on from John, this is the third and the most recent industry plant, and that is Nan Haley. Now, a lot of you who have seen him recently, you might not even know his name, because unless you've been clicking on the videos where he's on Fox News or clicking on the Tucker Carlson interview with him, all these different things, you wouldn't even know his name because none of these channels use his name in the title. They use his mom's name because his mom is Nikki Haley. They never say Nan Haley, they say Nikki Haley's son. I'm not even kidding. Look it up on YouTube. You're going to get a bunch of titles, a bunch of videos, even from Tucker Carlson, where it says a conversation with Nikki Haley's son. Nobody knows who this dude is. And if you don't know who Nikki Haley is, dude, she was an ambassador to the United Nations. She's an establishment conservative Republican. Dude, her son is a fucking industry plant, dude. The only reason he is showing up on Fox News and the only reason people are writing articles about him is because of his mom and his mom's connections. That is literally the definition of an industry plant. That is the only reason he has any platform. Nobody knew who he was. He didn't start a YouTube channel where he started giving his opinions 10 years ago. He just has a Twitter and an Instagram where he started talking about things and popping up everywhere. And because of his mom, he has a platform now. That's the reason why people brought him on and people are talking about him. So he is an industry plant, 100%. But I will say something about Nan that I can't say about the other two. And that is, when you watch the videos, the interviews, the news segments with this guy on, he says a lot of things you want to hear. I'm not even going to lie. Does he say everything you want to hear? No. But as far as like an industry plant, he's not like Hollyhand to where he's repeating the BoomerCon talking points. He's not like John Doyle in the sense that he's a domesticated lab rat, because he is saying things that I think are actually constructive to the GOP. He's telling them like, hey, you guys are losing the vote of younger Gen Z men, and you guys are going to fuck up everything if you don't try to win them over. Like, you're losing them. They're leaving in droves. They're going to Nick, and then when they're not going to somebody like Nick, they're going over to the left. They're becoming socialists. They're doing all these different things. So he's giving some good points, but I still don't see this guy ever actually talking about the root causes to these issues. I don't think you're ever going to see him go on Fox News and talk about how we got to get rid of all the Israel First loyalists in our government. I don't think you're ever going to see him question Israel First policies in our government. And so I don't really have too much to say about Nan because I just don't know that much about him. Like, that's what I'm saying. He's so recent in the fact. At least with Hollyhand, that kid's been making videos since he was 12. So you have like a little bit of a history with him to where you can go back and see him and see like how he's kind of always been the same. He's been basically groomed to be a boomer conservative. But Nan, you don't really know. But one thing is apparent, he is an industry plant. There's no way this guy, if he didn't have Nikki Haley as his mom, he would have the platform that he has now. And you could make the argument that, well, even though his mom is an establishment conservative and she supports Israel and this and that, that's a lot of like Republican moms. You know, that's a lot of Republican parents. I'll even admit it to you. My mom, she loves Israel. My mom loves Israel. She is a Judeo-Christian. She's all of that shit. I'm none of that. So you could make the same argument. It's like, well, maybe Nan's just like you, Tom. You know, his parents think the same way your parents do, but he's just like you. He thinks just like you. And it's like, well, yeah, but the difference being is that my mom wasn't the ambassador to the United Nations. My mom didn't run for president. She didn't speak at the GOP conventions. You know, like, there's a difference. And I'm not going to be mad at this dude. I'm just going to give you guys a word of caution with Nan. Whereas the other two guys, you can completely discredit them at this point. With Nan, I would just say have a bit of caution with him. You know, he's getting platformed by Fox News. There's no way some dude who's getting platformed by Fox News, especially just out of nowhere, there's no way somebody who's getting that platform is going to talk about the root causes to a lot of the issues and problems. is going to talk about international Jewry that affects not only America, but the West as a whole. Like, this guy isn't going to talk about all these Jewish conventions that just happened where you had Jewish people literally admit that they control Hollywood, and then they blamed us for being the reason why they control Hollywood. After decades of people saying Jews run Hollywood and everybody getting mad and saying that's not true, that's racist, that's anti-Semitic, now they're straight up just coming out and admitting that they run Hollywood. You're not going to see someone like Nayland talk about that stuff. But he is at least going to bring up some good criticisms to the GOP and to the Republican Party. So I'm not going to completely hate on him, but I'm not on board with this guy either. I don't trust him. I don't trust him. I don't trust any of these guys. I don't trust anybody that would platform these people because there's a weird game being played. You know, these are industry plants for a reason. They're industry plants in the sense that they're made to psyop the younger generations and do damage control for them, as well as the older generations. These people are not going to set trends. They're not going to talk about the major issues that people really have on their minds. They're going to follow the trends. When we talk about something, whether it's on my channel or just people who are like me in general, when we bring up an issue or Nick brings up an issue or people like Nick, you will see these people 3 weeks to a month later bringing up the same topics on their channel, on their show. Why? Because they can't avoid it. But that's not necessarily good. That doesn't mean they have a good prediction of where things are going or really a finger on the pulse of this nation and this society. That kind of tells you that they're just playing catch up. And that tells me that they're just being used as damage control for those topics from the establishment. That's not telling me that they're doing this in a way that's going to be meaningful to me or to my future. So that's pretty much it for the conservative trio. But besides the good goyams on the right, you have the people on the left. You have people like Hassan Piker. Or at least you had somebody like Hassan, because Hassan basically is out of the game. This dude just spent weeks in China, where he was streaming in China, talking about how much he loves China and he loves their government and the way they do things. And it's funny because he doesn't talk about like their social credit system and how there are like a bunch of homeless people in China because they say the wrong things and they get blacklisted from having a credit card or living in an apartment or having a job, and they become homeless and essentially just starve to death. He doesn't talk about that, but he talks about, you know, how, dude, it's got like Soviet Union building blocks and their infrastructure, and then it's like these Soviet Union buildings next to the Gucci store. The Gucci store, man, where you can get Gucci drip and Balenciaga, and I just love that. That's so me. And then, you know, this fucking dude who like loves torturing his dog on camera, you know, he goes there and he streams himself walking around the Tiananmen Square where there was like this big event going on. He was streaming himself walking around, and then out of nowhere the police stop him and they force him and everybody who's with him to show their phones and go through the images on their phones, and they made him delete certain like pictures he had. I think it was like some memes he had on his phone because they were illegal or whatever. And this shit happens to him, and he comes back from his China trip and he's just glazing China. He's like, I love it. I wish America was like China. It's so great. And it's like, bro, if the shit that happened with him at the Tiananmen Square happened in America, dude, he would be fucking suing the city of LA. He would be bitching about the police, making him go through his phone, stopping him, profiling him, all this. Dude, he would be bitching nonstop to the end of days. But because it happens in China, he's just sucking him off, bro. He is guzzling cum from China, dude. It's insane. So he's lost a lot of credibility recently, and especially because he electrocuted his dog, and then he just won't admit it, that he likes torturing his dog. That was another reason. But the Democrats, the liberals, they have a big problem with trying to appeal to younger men. And, you know, we'll have to make a video talking about this, and we'll go in depth with Hassan and all the other people, but they have like a big issue a big issue, and they're trying to do their own industry plants, but it's just not working because there's no amount of their policies or really anything that appeals to men, at least on their own. The only time they can get men to come over to their side is when they just get men who are in desperate need of pussy, so they follow the liberal women over to the Democrats, to the liberals. And so that's why they do what they do. And like I said, we'll make a video talking about that. Maybe I'll make a video talking about that this week. I feel like it would be a good sequel to this because it is kind of funny and it's actually pathetic how poorly they just struggle with young men. They just don't understand younger men at all. And it's hilarious. But that's pretty much it. I wanted to talk about these industry plants, and yeah, I only talked about 3 of them. But I feel like these were the 3 most recent, Nick Fuentes clones, the safe space, Israel first, Israel approved Nick Fuentes clones, industry plants that have entered the chat. And I just wanted to talk about it, give my opinion, and also get your opinion on this. What do you guys think? Do you guys know of any other industry plants that have been around that are Gen Z? Do you know older ones? Who did I not talk about here that is still relevant, that is obviously being propped up by the establishment? What do you guys think? And also, do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know what you think. And if you did enjoy the video, if you got any enjoyment out of it, if you like this channel, go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell notification to get notified when I upload in the future. Go ahead and follow me on Rumble. We're creating a platform over there. I love Rumble, dude. It's good to have a second place where I can go. There's 2 reasons why I have a Rumble account. The first one being, if I ever get banned off YouTube or censored, I'll have a platform there. You can always watch my videos there. And there's a chance I could get banned off Rumble too. I understand that's a possibility, but for now, I can literally do and say whatever I want. It's awesome. So go over there and follow me. But the second reason is because until I get censored or banned, a good reason for having Rumble is the fact that I can have exclusive videos. I can have videos where I don't censor myself. I can have videos where I can just kind of go off. And then I can even have extended videos where I talk about completely extra topics than the version I'll have on YouTube, because maybe that topic is just a big no-no on YouTube. Maybe it will just get the video blacklisted. So it's like, you know what? I'll just leave that for the Rumble extended edition, the extended director's cut on Rumble. So it's going to be fun. You'll have a lot of exclusive videos over there. So go ahead, make an account, follow me on Rumble, and follow me on X. I'm trying to get to 1K followers on X. I want to get big enough to where I can start like beef. I want to start fucking with people. Also, and I've had some conversations with other YouTubers, we want to eventually do Twitter Spaces, X Spaces, which are basically like voice chats where we can talk about different issues and you guys can all join in and listen. And even if you have some opinions, we can bring you up and you guys can ask questions, stuff like that. So there's a lot of possibilities with X, and I want to get bigger on there, have a bigger platform on there so we can have a lot more fun. But besides X and besides Rumble, for YouTube, another big thing I want to start to get into is streaming. So I'm trying to figure out streaming. I'm not really knowledgeable on how to do all that stuff. If you guys have any tips for streaming, please leave them below. But streaming is something I definitely want to do. I want to be able to stream on YouTube and Rumble. That's what I want. And I want to do a few different types of shows or videos for the live streams. And I think streaming will be a lot of fun. Hopefully I can start doing it before the end of the year. So I don't know when that's going to be, but hopefully it happens before the end of the year. But that all being said, guys, thank you so much for the love and the support. The fact that we have 10,000 subs on this channel is insane. You guys are crazy. But thank you all so much. It means the world to me. It really does that we can have these conversations. So thank you all. And like always, guys, Jesus Christ is King of Kings, Lord of Lords, America first, always. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you all later.